And the Canadian Grand Prix is done and dusted, and Max Verstappen is the winner of the Canadian Grand Prix, holding off Carlos Sainz in the very end. And Lewis Hamilton, what a drive from him as he finishes third on the podium. But let's recap the 2022 Canadian Grand Prix. So starting off the race, we got to talk a little bit about qualifying. We had on the front row Max Verstappen on pole, and of all people, Fernando Alonso starting right alongside him in the Alpine. And I was really hoping for it to start that maybe Fernando would get a much better start and, you know, be alongside Max, and maybe there was some chaos that was going to happen. But unfortunately, Max just got too good of a start at the beginning of this race and was able to get ahead of Fernando Alonso and was able to pull out a little bit of a gap there at the very beginning. And you could see that Carlos Sainz had a really fast Ferrari today, and you have to wonder if Leclerc was in, you know, a similar position to Sainz, you know, where Leclerc was going to possibly be able to finish. But, you know, Sainz was able to pass Alonso early on into the race in the first 10 laps. But then we got two very early virtual safety cars. First person bringing it out was Sergio Perez with power unit issues, and you have to wonder, you know, I knew the reliability was going to be a problem for Red Bull. We hadn't seen it pop up since, you know, about third race into the season, and it reared its ugly head for Sergio as he has to retire with power unit issues. And then after that first safety car or virtual safety car, then you had Mick Schumacher, which I am so heartbroken for. He had such a great weekend, had such a great qualifying session, qualified P6. You know, lost a place or two in the very early going, but you have to start to wonder, was that maybe a power unit issue? And, you know, it finally, as Guan Yu Zhou was passing him for 9th position, just literally the engine let go, and literally the exact same spot that Sergio Perez was in. But two early virtual safety cars, I think, really threw this race totally off as far as pit strategies go. After the first virtual safety car, you saw about 5 or 6 cars pit. Then you had, after the second one, then you had a majority of the others pit. And so it put a lot of people out of cycle. And then, you know, I'm going to rip a little bit on Haas throughout this video, but you know, Kevin Magnussen, you know, got a little bit of front wing damage, you know, in a little bit of a tussle with Lewis Hamilton. You know, racing incident, no big deal, you know, and even Kevin, I think, readily admits that was a racing incident. Just got a little bit too close to Lewis, but it knocked off, basically knocked off the end plane for Kevin Magnussen and just wasn't able to recover that. And eventually, the black and orange flag got shown to Kevin Magnussen, which means he's got to pit to replace that front wing, as, you know, it looked like that piece was about ready to fall off, and several of the drivers that saw it even said it looks like this piece is about ready to fly off. So, unfortunately, Kevin has to pit, drops all the way down to dead last. You know, is able to kind of make some positions up, but I'm like I said, I'm going to rip into Haas here in a little bit. But in the early going, you got the Fernando Alonso, who was running a relatively good race, but you could tell Alpine's strategy today was based more solely on safety cars, and they waited so long to pit Fernando Alonso, and it eventually drops him back behind his teammate Esteban Ocon during this race. And I mean, they really did Fernando dirty in this race. I truly think that Alpine really did Fernando Alonso no service at all during this race. I truly think that Fernando had the much better car and was really going to be able to give the fight to Mercedes had you had him on the right strategy. Now we get to a little bit of the middle of the race, and like I was saying, it got very boring. I'm gonna post 2 of my tweets up here. We needed a safety car, and we needed it bad. And, you know, I hate to hit on, you know, Canada's favorite F1 racer, potentially, Nicholas Latifi. But I was calling on Nicholas to give us a safety car. But, a few laps later, it wasn't Nicholas, it wasn't Lance Stroll, it was Yuki Tsunoda coming out of the pits. Finally gave us some more interesting races as he was coming out of the pits on cold, hard tires. He was just trying way too hard coming out of the pits and just absolutely, bend it into the wall at turn one into turn two there. Broke off the suspension, brings out the safety car. Now, and this is where I'm gonna get on to Haas a little bit, because Carlos Sainz is able to pit. As this is happening, Carlos Sainz is able to pit, and Kevin Magnussen is right behind him. Not right behind him, but, far enough behind him that it would make sense that if you see a Carlos Sainz or you see some other guys pulling into the pits, which they did when Yuki crashed, they all kind of knew a safety car was getting ready to come, and all of a sudden, so here comes Carlos Sainz out of the pits. He's just going to be behind Max Verstappen. And all of a sudden, I see Kevin Magnussen on the straightaway just coming up right behind Carlos Sainz. And, oh my God, Haas has absolutely shot themselves in the foot once again with their strategy calls. I mean, it's just, you had such great qualifying. You qualified P5 and P6. Through no fault of his own, Mick Schumacher has to retire out of this race. Then you give a shit strategy to Kevin Magnussen and don't pit him under the safety car. What are you doing, guys? This is ridiculous. You have ruined a perfectly good qualifying session for Haas, and you've literally finished dead last in the race today. But after the pit stops under the safety car, you got Max Verstappen in first, Carlos Sainz in second, Lewis Hamilton in third, George Russell in fourth. It was setting up to be quite the battle with 15 laps to go, and God, was it ever. I mean, Carlos Sainz, once the safety car pulls in, Carlos Sainz just within that second, and lap after lap, he was just staying within distance, but Max just showing, the veteran driver that he is, he just showed it off. Lap in and lap out, showed that he was not going to fold under pressure. And Carlos Sainz just ran out of laps, even with the fresher tires that Carlos Sainz had. Just was not able to make the pass, and unfortunately for him, he's going to finish second, Max Verstappen winning the race. But, I think without the safety car towards the end of the race, this was going to be one of those Canadian Grand Prix that we were all going to be like, this was a meh race. But thank God the safety car came out. Congratulations to Max Verstappen. But let's get on into the race results and let's talk a little bit more about those. So now getting on into the race results. So obviously Max Verstappen finishing first, Carlos Sainz finishing just under a second behind Max Verstappen. Lewis Hamilton getting his first podium of the season, beating George Russell for the first time in 7 races. This was a really good drive, and I think this does a little bit of wonders for Lewis. Gets a little bit of his confidence back. I'm sure he was probably starting to lose a little bit of confidence, finishing behind George Russell, race after race after race. So this is a good result for him. George Russell finishing 4th. Charles Leclerc, I cannot believe this, started basically dead last today, was able to finish 5th. What a drive from Charles Leclerc. My driver of the day, Charles Leclerc. Coming from the back of the field, great strategy calls by Ferrari all day. This is what you need to do, Haas. Take a page out of Ferrari's handbook and learn how to do strategies like Ferrari. But, literally, Charles Leclerc, great recovery drive, finishing P5. Esteban Ocon finishing 6th, Fernando Alonso 7th. This is one of those ones for me, I feel like Fernando really needed to be ahead of Esteban in the grand scheme of things, but even towards the end of the race, getting more race orders and more team orders, Alpine basically told Alonso, stay behind Esteban Ocon, and I'm getting tired of the team orders. We're literally 9 races into the season. They're there's supposedly team orders are outlawed in Formula One, but I mean, I think we all would be remiss if we didn't realize that they're not really banned. Like, they're still going on. The teams have learned how to word their messages to their drivers, and just another reason why we really need to limit the radio chatter between the teams and the drivers. Then you had a really great result by Alfa Romeo as Valtteri Bottas and Guan Yu Zhou had a really great showing here in 7th and 8th, 8th and 9th. Really good race by Guan Yu Zhou, was able to keep it in the top 10, basically finished a place ahead of where he started. Valtteri had a great recovery drive from 11th. You know, this is a great result for Alfa Romeo, as this is going to further them up the table, and I'll show the drivers and team standings at the very end of the video so you guys can see where everybody was at. But I mean, Guan Yu Zhou had one hell of a weekend for Alfa Romeo. Another guy that, you know, in qualifying got into his first Q3 of his entire career as a rookie. Absolutely amazing drive from him. Congratulations to Guan Yu Zhou. Then rounding out the top 10, you had Lance Stroll, who Sebastian Vettel was in 10th position here, but Sebastian hadn't pitted in I think it was 50 some odd laps. And he's another one of those ones that really got punished by his team for their poor strategy calls. As eventually Vettel drops down the order, Lance Stroll able to pick up the final points-paying position for Aston Martin. Great race from him, you know, recovery drive from 18th, you know, was able, or 17th, excuse me, he was just ahead of Nicholas Latifi, but great drive to get into the final points-paying position. Then to run down the rest of the field, you have Daniel Ricciardo in 11th position. I think really good recovery drive for McLaren, although McLaren has kind of dropped off here in the recent races. It looked like they had maybe, you know, solved some of the issues that they were having in the very early going, and they looked like they were going to be maybe that fourth best team all of a sudden, but, you know, they've all of a sudden dropped off, but Daniel Ricciardo has a great drive here, finishing 11th, just finishing outside of the points, but, you know, it's one of those, you know, McLaren's got to find something, got to maybe make some updates. Obviously, they had some power unit issues with Lando Norris during qualifying, so that may have been part of the issue here. But again, 11th place, not a horrible drive. He did just drop out of the points. You had Sebastian Vettel, who dropped off from 10th place, was in that final points-paying position. He dropped down to 12th. Just at the very end, you had Alexander Albon with a very good race. He finished in 13th. Pierre Gasly was just, the AlphaTauris were just nowhere, and they've really shown a lot of pace throughout the season, and just, it seems like all of a sudden that pace has dropped off, and there were some whispers that maybe the AlphaTauri was having some power unit issues, and maybe their car just wasn't up to snuff this weekend, and so Pierre Gasly was finishing in 14th position. Then you had Lando Norris in 15th. This is a race to forget for Lando. He had power unit issues in qualifying. I have a feeling that part of that leaked over into the race. Obviously, poor pit stops also really hampered Lando Norris throughout today. It was so bad for Lando, and I feel so horrible for him because, without that really horrible double-stack pit stop early on in the race, I think he may have been a little bit further up the field, maybe a little bit closer to Daniel. Then you had Nicholas Latifi in 16th position, and oh my God, this is paining me so much to say that a Haas finished behind a Williams here, as Kevin Magnussen is the last finisher of the race. He finishes in 17th position, but like I told you, strategy calls from Haas are just, they're overthinking too much, and it's really, really hampered them throughout this season, and it hampers them once again. Then obviously your non-finishers were Yuki Tsunoda with the crash just out of the pit lane. You had Mick Schumacher, who didn't finish with a power unit failure. And then you had Sergio Perez with a power unit failure as well. So, it was just Absolute heartbreak for those guys. But guys, let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of the Canadian Grand Prix? Did you guys think it was the race that everybody wanted, or was it just kind of one of those ho-hum, you know, just kind of their races? Let me know your rating on a 1 to 5 scale. Let me know in the comment section down below. Guys, also slap a like on this video so this video gets out to more and more Formula One fans. Guys, also subscribe if you guys are new to this channel. If you guys are watching this video, subscribe if you guys are new to this channel, as I've got daily, weekly Formula One content coming out all the time. I just put out a video for my 2023 drivers predictions of where drivers will be next season. So guys, check that video out if you guys haven't already. But subscribe for more weekly Formula One content. But guys, for all fathers out there and the American F1 fan, happy Father's Day. And I'm signing off.